Hi everyone, welcome to the series Let's Get Solving with Google Cloud, and this is session 3. I am Ajinkya Khole, machine data and machine learning instructor at Google Cloud. Let me see myself full screen. So this is session 3 where in past two sessions we talked about infrastructure. First it was optimizing, developing an application for cloud agnostic way. Session 2, it was optimizing network spending cost. Now for session 3 we go to data. You see, every company is a data company. That's what Google Cloud actually really believes. And we have amazing tools which allow us to scale for volume of data. And no matter the background, it has democratized data warehousing and machine learning. The favorite product is BigQuery. I love BigQuery, and I'm sure you will love BigQuery too. It's a data warehouse which, with help of SQL 2011, allows us to run queries on extremely large amount of data. I run a demo query which kind of like in a second goes through around 200, 300 GBs of data processing per second. Imagine 300, 400 GBs worth of data per second, and that too is not the upper limit of the performance of the data warehouse. You can do analytics in that, you can do machine learning in that. So the data modernization kind of like involves BigQuery very heavily, and in this session what we are going to see is we are going to see how we can build dashboards using the data warehouse, which is nothing but BigQuery. And for building dashboards, what do we have? We can use either Data Studio, or we can use Looker, which has been acquired by Google, or whatever dashboarding tool which I might be comfortable with using. BigQuery has connectors written for almost all the public speaking dashboarding tools which we have available. BigQuery can connect to them natively. Okay, so we have gotten used to using Qwiklabs by now, I hope. If not, maybe you can go back to the session 1, and the first half of that session talks about intro to Qwiklabs. Here we will not kind of like spend more time here. We will spend more time into maybe the labs. Okay. So again, I'll just reiterate this thing, which is bit.ly link. 2 capital Y, 1 small j, small b, capital P, capital J. Create account if you don't have there. If you already have, simply go there, log in, find out the lab which we are going to execute, which in this case is about BigQuery and dashboarding, and then we are ready to get started. Okay. How are we ready to get started? We are ready by opening the lab, copying the username and password, and logging in with those details into incognito window, right? So we have to open Google Cloud Console and just log in with incognito window. Okay, so going forward, the lab which we are going to do is this. You simply have to search this string. How to build a BI dashboard using Google Data Studio and BigQuery. So you see, since 2012, 2013-ish, what we have had is like we have had huge emphasis in trying to use artificial intelligence. Okay, so just like before we have to, let's say, modernize our house with, let's say, furniture we are creating for custom house which we have built. We can't do that if the house itself is not built. In the exact same manner, if we want to do AI, we can't do that if we don't have the data infrastructure already set up in place. So business intelligence, before we can do business intelligence, which is like dashboarding or reports which allow us to take insight from the data we have, or we want to do AI, which is like using artificial intelligence, which is leveraging the data we have, trying to extract decisions from the data patterns we have. So BI is kind of like creating a report and then human takes an action. AI is like we have the data through which we create a model on which we extract insight, and then the model recommends or takes action for us. So whether it is BI or whether it is AI, it all hinges on the data modernization, which we do using BigQuery. Okay, so if you simply search AI hierarchy of needs, you will be redirected to a blog in which talks about the pyramid of needs. You have to have level 1 before you can go to level 2. You have to have level 3 before you can go to level 4. This is exactly what we have. We want to do in an incremental manner. Okay. Oops. Directly, let's go to the lab. So the lab is this lab, how to build BI dashboard. You simply have to search to the whatever Qwiklab console we are part of. Simply search the string and you have to start the lab. Okay. So you see BigQuery. BigQuery is a very popular, very famous, very fast Very easy to use data warehousing tool. I love it. Okay. BigQuery is amazing. It only uses SQL 2011 as a API kind of like to it. And in the background, even though it looks like SQL, it's not SQL. It is insanely fast for big data analytics which we want to do. Okay. So for BigQuery, there are lots of publicly available data sets which are available, which you can use just for fun. Okay. If you create a trial version, I think there is a BigQuery free sandbox in which 5 TB of data per month, GB or TB. I don't know, but certain amount of data is available for you to free to query. Okay, so kind of like you can experiment with BigQuery, and BigQuery has a lot of publicly available data sets which are fun. So you see, this is the link in which some of the data has been mentioned here. Okay, so let's see. Let me just zoom in a bit. Okay, so worldwide news data 240 GB and growing every 50 minutes. Cool. Then we have knowledge graph 28 GB. Again, knowledge, but it doesn't sound that cool. We have weather data 23 GB. We have entire Wikipedia data. Wikipedia has around 380 GB per month. Okay, but 300 GB is nothing. If I get my DNA sequenced, okay, we pick up blood and we get DNA sequenced, my genome code will be more than 250 GB at least. And we can profile it in much more detail. We have a technology in which we can do gene editing now. It's called as CRISPR. But no matter what we want to do, what we have a large volume of data which needs to be processed, and we need a tool which can allow us to process that easily. This is my favorite example. So CERN Hadron Collider, open data. So CERN Hadron Collider. So this experiment tried to recreate a Big Bang, which created universe. Okay. Now the data from this, the experiment would have lasted maybe less than 1 nanosecond, maybe, when the electrons were accelerated through this huge hadron collider, and when they collided, the data which they created, we detected Higgs boson. It must not have been 2 years or 1 year it was detected. Okay. The data which was created in the experiment which happened for less than whatever time it lasted for, I think must be in scale of nanosecond. The data alone took more than few years to crunch. Just to tell you how difficult it is to actually do data crunching. They have more than 2 petabytes worth of data made open source available. If you want to find out your own atomic subparticles, finding stars is easy. But if you want to find a particle which you want to maybe get named after yourself, the data is publicly available. There is a competition on Kaggle in which how you can do that, how you can find high velocity particles, that some starter code is also available. You can find out few people who have tried to do that experiment themselves. Now, whether it is the quantum kind of like related, wherein we are trying to find out atomic particles, or whether it is gene related, whether we have a genome of, whether it is human genome or some plant genome, some animal genome, we have those genome data available. We want to crunch it, or I'm working on cancer data, I want to cure cancer, or I'm working on code. We are all developers, and for us, if we want to do a developer related tool, we want to develop that. I can crunch the entire GitHub data, right? So if I want to crunch the entire GitHub data, there is one company, Codota. It's kind of like AI editor, AI intelligence code editor. It kind of like crunches the GitHub data. So I hope until now I would have convinced you the need to have a data warehousing system which is easy to use, which is optimal in performance, and that system is BigQuery. And on top of that, we are going to build a dashboard, and that's how this lab is going to be. But if you want to find other labs which you are interested in, you can do anything. You can search on google.qwiklabs.com. You can find out any lab you are interested in and just go ahead with it. Amazing labs we have. We can use them for whatever we want to do. Okay. So we have this GitHub code. We have some other data, weather data, and what do we have? Ooh, Reddit. So all the comments on the Reddit, 1.9 million Reddit comments, insane. Okay. And such data can be used for a lot of fun things, creating natural language processing systems, natural language understanding system, or natural language creation systems. I have seen a few experiments which can generate poems which are so amazingly articulate that it makes you, just marvel at the place where we have reached in terms of extracting intelligence out of data. It will not be far in future until we could have a system which is so amazing that, we can pass Turing test. We will be unable to distinguish whether this something said is said by a human or said by a AI. Okay, let me just make it just screen. Okay, now you are just hearing me. But how did you know that? Maybe it is an AI system which is cloning my voice and doing that. If you think it is fake, we already have a system which can do this cloning thing. Okay, those kind of like projects are available on GitHub, but all it hinges on the data thing. And as data is the most important thing, let's just pay attention to whatever BigQuery is allowing us to do. Okay, so okay, we're done. And if you want to find out, if you can go to marketplace and select datasets. We have around 152 publicly available datasets on BigQuery, which you can, the storage part you don't have to pay. You simply query them and you can use to do whatever you want to do. Maybe if you want to work on COVID dataset, or you want to work on some real estate or Bitcoin or crime, taxi trips or whatever it could be, right? Easy peasy. Now let's start executing the lab. So how do we do that? We click on start lab. This starts its own timer. We open incognito window and log in with this free username and password. So I'm going to do that, console.cloud.google.com. Copy paste this. And we are logging in now. This is how exactly you'll do. Okay, if I'm doing this lab by myself, now we don't have activity tracking available in this lab, but it would have been cool to have it. But let's just, focus on the BigQuery part. If you want to go more into BigQuery, you can go for documentation of BigQuery, check use cases of BigQuery. That would be a pretty great reading to do. It's cool. Okay. Now, what are we doing? We are building a BI dashboard. Okay. Dashboard, what's the data set here? It's kind of like, let's say I have a city. I'm focused on how many trees are planted here. What's the tree cover? And maybe I want to figure out some, maybe the timing of watering those plants. Maybe checking, how should we upgrade the plants or something. It's kind of like in San Francisco, we have created trees data set. Okay, that's the solution. Wherein we'll know how to figure out how to, query the data, how to add the data into BigQuery and stuff like this. Just the basics, right? So, okay, this is not what I'll be using. I'll be using the Qwiklabs thingy. So I sign in into incognito window. After I have signed in, I select the project. Okay, so I've selected the project. Done. Now I am going to BigQuery. BigQuery is present in big data section. Okay, if I want, I could pin it. So I'm scrolling down. And I could kind of like pin this here. So it would come as a top of my home screen, and if I'm just using BigQuery very frequently, I could do that. So this is how the UI looks like. We have a query editor here. We don't have, let's say, auto completion here, but it's pretty cool. We have query where we can type it, we can see output here, we can see project history, we can see personal history, we can go into more, we can go into query settings, and we have details like this. Whether we save it into a temporary table, do we save it into another table, and blah 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 blah. Do we cache the results? Do we do it batch? And stuff like this. If you go into advanced options, we talk about encryption here. Okay. If you want to keep upper limit on the billing, you can do that here. If you check on the left hand side, we have saved queries, job histories, we have scheduled queries. We have new feature which is pretty amazing, BigQuery reservations. So if you check into the documentation and go into BigQuery reservations, you should find how you can reserve some computational performance for it, how you can kind of like get pricing done, how you can kind of like pay for per query or pay standard charges, stuff like this. It's kind of like pretty cool. So let's not go into that. Let's just focus on the lab we have, which is this lab. So what we want to do here is like this is one. We have to add the data from public data sets. Okay. We have to find out trees. Okay. So I'm clicking on add data, explore public data set, and I'm searching trees. We have 3 trees. We have San Francisco, we have New York, and you have US forest, and in this thing it is street trees is what we are doing. I hope that's what, yeah, okay, yes, that's what it is. So let's say view datasets. Okay, it's already been added into here. Okay, now what are the next instructions? Now what we have to do, create datasets. We want to create a dataset called as reports. Okay, let me see if I can pin it. Okay, I can't pin it. Maybe let me just run a basic query here. Select star so that I have this query in my history. Okay, the query is done, basic query is done. Let me go here, let me hide this. Okay, now I have selected this project which we have logged in for this lab, and we are creating a data set. The name is reports. Okay, we have reports, and then we are executing this query. Okay, so finding how is my tree cover, maybe if I have data of how much was the tree cover last year, maybe year before that. It doesn't make in the city, but if I could somehow extract information of trees or density or something in a forest, for forest care, maybe national parks or maybe Amazon forest cover, I could kind of like really maximize the health of my tree cover, right? So here I'm doing my regular SQL kind of like query. Let's just execute this query here. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm getting timestamp, I'm counting, getting tree IDs, and I'm counting them. What is the species, who is the caretaker, what's the address, what's the site info, and this is the BigQuery kind of like location. And I have some where queries where I'm checking, some timestamp, just 1 year thing. I'm grouping by plant mass, species, caretaker, address, and site info and something. As you can see in the bottom right corner, this is telling me how much data it's going to execute or process after we run the query. And I'm saying run. It's BigQuery is for big data, and the data it is processing is 19 MB. Okay, had it been 19 GB, had it been 19 TB, or had it been 19 petabyte, BigQuery wouldn't have worried at all. It's a serverless product wherein we don't have to assign any computation resources to it. BigQuery does everything by itself. Everything, the storage part it figures out, optimization part it figures out, execution, query optimization, it figures out everything. So I simply write a SQL 2011 format query and I start using it. That's the fun part, BigQuery makes everything so easy. Okay, so this query gave me details. I said, ooh, I forgot to write it into this table called as trees. Okay, so let's just go execute this query again. Instead of getting the result, we want to set the table as trees. Write it empty and save. Okay, so I run, it is going into destination table something, I can see the detail here. It's going to write if it empty and there is no caching. Okay, fine. Let's scroll down. Details, write if empty, interactive, standard, and processing location, auto select. We have selected table name, it's the reports one. Okay, so now click the run the query, click on reports datasets and see on the results. Okay, that's what I want to do. What we are being asked, open reports, open trees, and in this table, if I query the table, this table has saved the data from the previous query which we executed, which is publicly available data. Okay, that's what has happened now. This is our Qwiklabs projects. In this is the dataset called as reports, and in this is the trees table which we just created, by the way. Okay, now what are we going again? We are putting in a scheduled query in BigQuery. Okay, so this is become stable now. So let me select the query which we are going to execute. Go to scheduled query. Create a scheduled query. Wait, are we in scheduled queries? Create a scheduled query. Okay, so copy paste this. We are saying schedule this query, create new scheduled query. Now we want to execute this daily, and what's the name? You can give any name, but let's just give this daily. Okay. So this is the name of the query which is executing daily. Schedule a start time, maybe 7:30 IST. Sounds good. Destination table is reports. And what's the table? Okay. You see, this query is going to get executed daily, and we are going to put it into the which table? Trees. And we are going to append. Okay. So this is kind of like regular query. We are not going to override because data is going to get lost. So let's append table, go into advanced option, any encryption, and schedule. Done. You see, this creates this scheduled query. It's gonna execute by every day. Gonna append the data and go. It's gonna go into our table which we have just created. So I've given permissions for this to execute, and the query scheduled. Right now, what we have now is we actually have data already present into BigQuery. Now we wanna open that into Data Studio. So Data Studio, what we have is kind of like very minimalistic data visualization tool, but that's fine. For simple purposes, simple tool suffices. Okay, open this query. I don't know what has happened, but anyways, it's been scheduled anyways. So let's open Data Studio. Let's connect it to whatever tool which we have. Oh, we have already here. Okay, so let's create a report, and in the report, I could kind of like create a report like any way I want. I can add a chart. I could kind of like say, okay, how's the processing of my trees in my city per day. What has happened. Who was it taken care of? What has happened? Which area has more trees? Stuff like this, scheduling. So for such a small data, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But whenever we are working on a bigger thing, that's something it's kind of like pretty cool to be able to do this. So I could either use Data Studio, I could use Looker, I could use something else. But point is, what we have is we have a place where data is present, and we have a UI tool through which we can see the reports. So let's create a blank report, and I'll just show you how this looks. Okay. So you see, we can connect to BigQuery, we can connect to lots of places. That's fine. We can authorize BigQuery. Okay, so let me scroll down in this Qwiklabs, in this reports. This is the table which we are authorizing. Add. Don't show me this again, and add to report. I have this ability to connect, and I can do whatever I want. I can add a chart, I can whatever way I want to do. I want to add a time series, I want to add regular this thing, I want to add a bar chart, pie chart, blah 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 blah. Pretty easy. But this is how you kind of like execute this lab. So you see, in this lab, what we have done is like we have not only created a dashboard, we have kind of like optimized our data warehouse. Not sorry, optimized. Scratch that. We have modernized our data warehouse and connected the data warehouse to a UI tool which we have had, right? So this is the kind of like approach. Now this lab is kind of like pretty cool. The tool is pretty useful, so I would recommend you guys check it out. In next session, we are going to actually take the data thing further. But instead of talking about just data warehouse, we are going to see how can you create our data ETL pipelines, whether taking a data from one place, processing it, getting into format we want, and maybe pass it through a certain series of transformations, and go any further and save it somewhere. So all of this processing we can actually do. That's going to be the session 4. Stay tuned. We'll go into part 2 of data modernization here. Thank you.